This letter was written to believers under pressure, facing authorities, tempted by culture, and led astray by false teaching. Revelation was given to reveal the truth of Jesus Christ, his victory over the enemy, his love for his people, and his promise to make all things new. When trials come, we do not lose heart. Jesus is the Lamb who was slain, who rose again, and who reigns on the throne. When darkness feels strong, we hold fast, for Jesus is the one who kills death.
It's at this time in our worship gathering that we turn our attention to the reading and the studying of God's Word. Today we're going to continue in our series, studying through the book of Revelation. And today we are going to be looking at chapters 17 and 18. So we're going to start just by reading chapter 17. We'll hit chapter 18 later on. But if you are able, would you please stand for the reading of the Word? Revelation 17 says this: "Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and said to me, 'Come, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers on earth have become drunk.' And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness. And I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead was written a name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of earth's abominations. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. When I saw her, I marveled greatly. But the angel said to me, 'Why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. And the dwellers on earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will marvel to see the beast, because it was and is not and is to come. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. They are also 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen. One is, the other has not yet come. And when he does come, he must remain only a little while. As for the beast that was and is not, it is an 8th, but it belongs to the 7, and it goes to destruction. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour, together with the beast. These are of one mind, and they hand over their power and authority to the beast. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those with him are called and chosen and faithful. And the angel said to me, 'The waters that you saw where the prostitute is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages. And the 10 horns that you saw, they and the beast will hate the prostitute. They will make her desolate and naked and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose by being of one mind and handing over their royal power to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. And the woman that you saw is the great city that has dominion over the kings of the earth.'" The word of the Lord. You may be seated. So when we come to Revelation chapter 17, we need to remember we're in the section that is the final battle. This is the final battle, the final conflict between God and evil, between Christ, the Lamb, and the dragon, and the beast, and all who worship the dragon and the beast. And remember, Revelation functions not as this linear, straightforward narrative, but through cycles. And when we come to the final battle, we kind of see these different sections that are all different perspectives on this final battle. If you remember, a couple weeks ago, we looked at this section on the rise of the beast and how those who belong to the beast are marked by the beast, but those who belong to the Lamb are marked by the Lamb. And when Bob preached on that passage, right, he highlighted how this passage is focused on teaching us that we belong to someone. There's no one who is markless. Everyone has a mark. Everyone either belongs to the beast or they belong to the Lamb. Last week, we again looked at this final conflict, but we looked at this passage on the bowls of wine of God's wrath. And we talked about how everyone drinks wine. You either receive the bowl of wrath or you receive the cup of grace from Christ. So we have these perspectives on the final battle that are focused on a contrast of some sort, right? There's a contrast between the mark of the beast and the mark of a lamb. There's the contrast between the bowls of wine of wrath and the cup of grace given to us by Christ. And today we enter into another section that is another contrast, but it's a contrast between two women. In chapter 17, we read about the first woman, Babylon. And she's not a literal woman, right? It's a personification. If you're unfamiliar with that term, personification, it's a literary feature where you take something, you take like an inanimate object, or you take like a concept, like beauty or wisdom, and you talk about them as if they are people. You make them into a person. Right? So when we just read chapter 17, we're introduced to this fearsome woman, this great prostitute. She's adorned in gold and jewels, and she has this goblet that's filled with the blood of the martyrs. Right? She's aligned with the beast. And we see that she's called Babylon. And at the very end of the chapter, we're very directly spoken to that, again, this is not a literal woman, but this is the great city of Babylon. This is the city of Babylon, which throughout the whole Bible is like an archetype of pure evil, right? Starting with the Tower of Babel, going to the Babylonian Empire, right? This city is the archetype of pure evil. It is the capital city of the empire that destroyed Jerusalem, that destroyed the Hebrew people, that took them over and exiled them, right? This city is being personified as a woman. And Revelation by no means, it's not the first portion of the Bible to use personification. Personification is really all throughout the Bible. So, for instance, I'll give you a couple of examples. In Psalm 98, verses 7 through 8, we're told that the rivers clap their hands and the mountains sing, right? It says, "May the sea roar and all it contains, the world and those who dwell in it. May the rivers clap their hands," right? Rivers don't have hands, right? I've never seen a river with hands, right? But the very Bible itself says the rivers are going to clap their hands. And the mountains are going to sing. I've never seen a mountain with a mouth, right? Maybe if you see like a little crevice, maybe you could, interpret that to be a mouth. But the mountains are singing. In Isaiah 55, the mountains are singing again. And it's not the rivers clapping their hands, it's the trees. Isaiah 55:12 says, "For you will go out with joy and be led in peace. The mountains and the hills will break into shouts of joy before you. And all the trees of the field will clap their hands." In Genesis chapter 4, verse 10, we see this personification of blood crying out. God says, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground." Likewise, in Proverbs 1:20, the concept of wisdom cries out. It says, "Wisdom shouts in the street. She raises her voice in the public square." Right? The Bible uses this all the time. It takes an inanimate object, or it takes a concept, and it treats it as a person, often for emphasis, right? Anytime you see personification, it's to emphasize a really important point. That when God is active, when God is doing something, it's as if the entire universe is responding to him. So when we come to Revelation chapter 17, we are introduced to the city of Babylon, this great and evil city. But the city is presented as this terrifying, deplorable, evil woman. Right? The passage we just read depicts her in a pretty harsh way, right? Revelation chapter 17, verse 5 says, "And on her forehead a name was written, Babylon the Great. What is she? The mother of prostitutes and the mother of the abominations of the earth." She commits every sin. She commits every evil. She is completely and totally intoxicated by evil and by this rebellion against God. But she doesn't stand alone. No, in a little bit, actually next week, we're going to be introduced to another city that is also personified as a woman. This is the city of the New Jerusalem. And this city is pretty much the exact opposite of Babylon. Whereas Babylon is presented as not just a prostitute, but the mother of all prostitutes, the New Jerusalem, Bob, if I'm stepping on your toes, just tell me to stop. I'll just stop and I'll move on to whatever my notes say is the next point, right? We're kind of cutting ahead a bit. But the New Jerusalem is presented to us the exact opposite of the mother of all prostitutes. The New Jerusalem is presented as this pure, holy, blameless, perfect bride, descending from the heavens for her wedding day, right? We are designed, Revelation is designed for us to read about Babylon and to read about the New Jerusalem and to compare them and to see how different they are, in the same way that the mark of the beast and the mark of the lamb are designed to be compared against one another, and the bowls of wrath and the cup of grace are designed to be compared against one another. Babylon is contrasted with Jerusalem. And again, this is not the first time that the Bible has taken two personified women and contrasted them against one another, right? This picture of Babylon as a woman and the New Jerusalem as a woman, it's actually built upon another reference, a reference to Proverbs. If you're familiar with Proverbs, you may know Proverbs is broken into a couple of different sections, but the first section, it's like the first 12 chapters or so, takes this concept of wisdom and foolishness and personifies them as women. You have wisdom being presented as this beautiful, wonderful woman who is a guide and who cares for all and who leads them and teaches them. And then you have the concept of foolishness. And she is presented as a woman who is not good or kind or helpful in any way, but she actually leads people to death. Here, these are passages from Proverbs 8 and Proverbs 9. See how wisdom is personified to be this beautiful, wonderful, godly woman who leads people to life. Proverbs 8, starting in verse 1 says, "Does not wisdom call and understanding raise her voice? On top of the heights beside the way where the paths meet, she takes her stand. Beside the gates at the opening to the city, at the entrance of the doors, she cries out, 'To you people I call, and my voice is to mankind. I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, and I find knowledge and discretion. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride, arrogance, the evil way, and the perverted mouth I hate. Advice is mine and sound wisdom. I am understanding. Power is mine. By me kings reign and rulers decree justice. By me princes rule and nobles, all who judge rightly. I love those who love me, and those who diligently seek me will find me. Riches and honor are with me, enduring wealth and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, even pure gold, and my yield better than choice silver. I walk in the way of righteousness, in the midst of the paths of justice, to endow those who love me with wealth, that I may fill their treasuries. Now then, sons, listen to me, for blessed are those who keep my ways. Listen to instruction and be wise, and do not neglect it. Blessed is the person who listens to me, watching daily at my gates, waiting at my doorposts. For one who finds me finds life and obtains favor from the Lord. But the one who sins against me injures himself. All those who hate me, they love death. Wisdom has now built her house. She has carved out her 7 pillars. She has prepared her food. She has mixed her wine. She has also set her table. She has sent out her attendants. She calls out from the tops of the heights of the city, 'Whoever is naive, let him turn in here. To him who lacks understanding, she says, come eat of my food and drink of the wine I have mixed. Abandon your foolishness and live and proceed in the way of understanding. Right? This is a picture of a woman like crying out to the whole city. Remember the very Proverbs 1, chapter 20, wisdom cries out aloud in the streets. Wisdom is personified as this woman calling out to the city she lives in. She says, come into my home. I will teach you. I will give you blessings. I will lead you to life, right? Think about the blessing and the abundance here. She says, I am understanding. Power is mine. I will give you great wealth. My food is sweeter and more beautiful and more wonderful than even pure gold, right? This is how wisdom is personified as this beautiful, wonderful, pure woman calling out to the city. She says, come to me. I will give you life. I will teach you the way of God. I will bless you. I will give you power, and I will give you wealth. Now listen to how foolishness or folly is personified as a woman. The very opposite, very similar to Babylon. Proverbs 9, 13 through 18 says, the woman folly is boisterous. She has a lack of understanding, and she knows nothing. She sits at the doorway of her house, on a seat by the high places of the city, calling to those who pass by, who are going straight on their paths. Oh no, whoever is naive, let him turn in here. And to him who lacks understanding, she says, stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he does not know that the dead are there, that her guests are in the depths of Sheol. Foolishness is presented as a woman standing outside her house, and she's seductive, and she sees the young men walking down the street, and she makes eye contact with them, and she wags her finger, and she says, come into my home. I will give you bread. I will give you wine. There's a very similar language that foolishness uses that mirrors the language of wisdom, but it's all bent in the opposite direction. And there's a trap waiting for all these young men who walk by foolishness's house. Right? Inside her house, in her basement, are the bodies of her victims. Right? This is what it says. Her guests are in the depths of Sheol. That is hell, the place of the dead. Right? Foolishness is described as this serial killer, seductive woman, right? Who has a basement full of bodies, and she stands outside her house luring young men into their death. Whereas wisdom says, I will give you life. I will give you blessing and abundance, wealth and power. Both of these women are described as powerful. Both of these women are described as strong and potent. They have influence. But one leads to life and one leads to death. And so it is with Babylon and Jerusalem. Babylon is described as a woman just like foolishness, seductive and powerful, strong. She is adorned with jewels and with gold, but she leads to death. All of the kings that are in cahoots with her, they find themselves in death. That's their destiny. Now for the New Jerusalem, the complete opposite. She is like Lady Wisdom. I'll let Bob talk more about that next week when we look at that passage at Palm Sunday. But the New Jerusalem is perfect and good and beautiful. And all the people who live in the New Jerusalem, all the people who make up this city, what do they experience? They experience nothing but life and blessing for all eternity. All eternity. But those who love Babylon and who live in Babylon, they experience nothing but chaos, evil, debauchery, and death. So what's the reason? What's the main point of the Bible using personification to talk about these main points? Because we've already, at length, throughout all of Revelation, we've always talked about those who love evil, right, are not going to have a good ending. Right? And those who love the Lamb, who love goodness, and who love God, they are going to experience life. We've seen this over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. So why are we kind of repeating the same song, but with a new flavor of viewing it through the lens of these two personified women. Well, this personification, it highlights love, right? If a couple of weeks ago when we looked at the marks, we saw how Revelation reveals how we belong to someone. And if last week, in looking at the bowls of wrath, we saw how Revelation reveals the intensity of the result of what happens to each group. The marks reveal who you belong to. The bowls reveal the result of what does it actually mean to belong to that group. This personification of Babylon and Jerusalem, this reveals why. Why do we belong to the beast or the lamb? Why are we going to end up tasting the bowl of wrath or the cup of grace? At the end of the day, it all comes down to who do we love? Who do we love? This chapter that we just read, Revelation 17, goes over and over and over again about how the kings love her. They love Babylon. And not just that, but it's not just the kings, it's everyone. Everyone who is with Babylon loves her. And when she is gone, they mourn her. They mourn her. If you have your Bibles open, look at chapter 18. Let's read it here. When Babylon falls, when Babylon is destroyed, listen to the despair of all of the people who love her. Revelation 18 says this, "After this I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was made bright with his glory. And he called out with a mighty voice, 'Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling place for demons, a haunt for every unclean spirit, a haunt for every unclean bird, a haunt for every unclean and detestable beast. For all nations have drunk the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality, and the kings of the earth have committed immorality with her. And the merchants of the earth have grown rich from the power of her luxurious living. Then I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins, lest you share in her plagues. For her sins are heaped high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Pay her back as she herself has paid back others, and repay her double for her deeds. Mix a double portion for her in the cup she mixed, as she glorified herself and lived in luxury. So give her like a measure of torment and of mourning, since in her heart she says, I sit as a queen, I am no widow, and mourning I shall never see. For this reason, her plagues will come in a single day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be burned up with fire, for mighty is the Lord God who has judged her. And the kings of the earth, who committed sexual immorality and lived in luxury with her, will weep and wail over her when they see the smoke of her burning. They will stand far off in fear of her torment, and they will say, Alas, alas, you great city, you mighty city, Babylon! For in a single hour your judgment has come. And the merchants of the earth weep and mourn for her, since no one buys their cargo anymore. Cargo of gold, silver, jewels, pearls, fine linen, purple cloth, silk, scarlet cloth, all kinds of scented wood, all kinds of articles of ivory, all kinds of articles of costly wood, bronze, iron, and marble, cinnamon, spice, incense, myrrh, frankincense, wine, oil, fine flour, wheat, cattle, and sheep, horses and chariots and slaves. That is human souls. The fruit for which your soul longed has gone from you. And all your delicacies and your splendors are lost to you, never to be found again. The merchants of these wares, who gained wealth from her, will stand far off in fear of her torment, weeping and mourning aloud. Alas, alas, for the great city that was clothed in fine linen, in purple and scarlet, adorned with gold, with jewels and with pearls. For in a single hour, all this wealth has been laid waste. And all the shipmasters and the seafaring men, sailors, and all whose trade is on the sea stood far off. And they cried out, as they saw the smoke of her burning, What city was like this great city? And they threw dust on their heads as they wept and mourned, crying out, Alas, alas, for the great city, where all who had ships at sea grew rich by her wealth, for in a single hour she has been laid waste. Rejoice over her, O heaven, and you saints and apostles and prophets, for God has given judgment for you against her. Then a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea, saying, So will Babylon, the great city, be thrown down with violence and will be found no more. And the sound of the harpists and the musicians, of flute players and trumpeters will be heard in you no more. And a craftsman of any craft will be found in you no more. And the sound of the mill will be heard in you no more. And the light of a lamp will shine in you no more. And the voice of the bridegroom and the bride will be heard in you no more. For your merchants were the great ones of the earth. And all nations were deceived by your sorcery. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all who have been slain on earth. Right, when we read Revelation 18 and we see this mourning about the fall of Babylon, we see it's not just kings. It's not just these evil emperors that have held power and have had riches from ruling over Babylon, ruling over these great cities, but it's all the people in the city who loved the city and who profited off of the city and who took part in its evil. They all mourn Babylon. Merchants and sailors and musicians, right? All of these people who lived in the city and loved the city and took part in its evil, they are all in complete despair and mourning when the city is crushed. Anyone who gained money from Babylon's evil, anyone who gained power from Babylon's evil, anyone who gained influence from Babylon's evil, anyone who gained pleasure from Babylon's evil, all of them mourn the fall of the city. And what this reveals is that the reason people loved Babylon is because they had something to gain from her. They could gain power from her. They could gain pleasure. They could gain wealth. They could gain influence. Why are they sad? Are they sad because they cared about a woman and they loved her so much and now she's gone? No. The kings are sad because their power is gone. The merchants are sad because their wealth is gone. The sailors are sad because they're out of a job, right? All of the people who were profiting off of the evil of Babylon are sad, not for her sake, but for their own sake. They loved money and wealth and power and pleasure. They loved all of that. That's why they loved Babylon. And that's why they participated in Babylon. But there's a call in here, a call in the passages we just read, for those who are faithful, for those who love something else, or rather someone else, to leave the city, leave Babylon. That's not your home, lest you experience the same fate as Babylon, but come to a new city. Come find a new love that will give you life. A love that isn't selfish, a love that isn't based around your own personal gain, but a love that is born out of grace and mercy and life. And here's the thing. We kind of skipped over how Babylon is defeated, how Babylon falls. Like we read how God will judge her. But what is the vehicle through which God judges Babylon? We read it here at the end of chapter 17, actually. If you go back to chapter 17, starting in verse 15, it says, "And the angel said to me, the waters that you saw where the prostitute is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages, and the 10 horns that you saw. They and the beast will hate the prostitute. They will make her desolate and naked and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire, for God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose by being of one mind and handing over all their royal power to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled." Right? Babylon is cannibalized by the very people who love it. Evil is devouring evil. The kings who love Babylon and the merchants who love Babylon and the people with power and influence, in their relentless pursuit of gaining power and riches, they end up killing Babylon itself. The language here is that they hate her. And that's what it really is. Their love of power and wealth and riches that they can gain from Babylon turns to a hatred of Babylon. And in their pursuit of pursuing power, their pursuit of pursuing riches, they mine it empty, right? Think about a king or a leader or even a businessman. In such pursuit of wealth and riches or elevating himself, he ends up destroying the very city he's supposed to rule over or the business that he has built, that he mines all of its resources bare. He drives all of the people to work to death. Like, this is the fate of Babylon. Evil cannot be sustaining. Evil cannot keep going. The very nature of evil, the very nature of sin is destructive. It's not self-sufficient. It is destructive and chaotic. But the way of Jesus is the exact opposite. The way of Jesus leads to life. Christ in the New Testament is described as the one who is sustaining all things. And in Jesus, we don't experience death, but we experience life. Life in abundance. There actually is wealth, and there is blessing, and there is power to be found in the Lamb who humbles himself and lays down his life. It's just a very different kind of wealth and blessing and power, right? Lady Wisdom offered blessing and riches and power. But that blessing and riches and power was found in true life. The offer from Babylon of blessing and riches and power and pleasure, it's not lasting. It's not sustaining. It's not true. It's here 1 second and it is gone the next, because the end result is the same result as Lady Folly. Death. Death. The question for us today is where ultimately, where is our love? Where is our love? Is our love in wealth? Is our love in pleasure? Is our love in power? Is our love in building ourselves up? Do we even treat Jesus that way? Where we don't actually love Jesus, we just love the things we can get from Jesus? And so in that kind of relationship, Jesus is really just a means to an end, the end of building ourselves up or securing ourselves. Because that kind of life is a foolish life that is ultimately destructive, even when we put a Christian label on it. Or do we actually love in a selfless way? Do we actually love the Lamb? And do we actually hate evil and hate sin? Are we willing to leave the city and find a new home? Because where your heart is, that is where your destiny will be. Where your heart is, that is where you will find to which group you belong to. Where your heart is, that will reveal whether you drink the cup or the bowl. This is why we have the personification. Why Babylon is presented as a woman. Why Jerusalem is presented as a woman. It all comes back to this idea of love, of beauty, right? Where is your heart set? The heart that is set on power and riches and wealth will end nowhere but death, despair, destruction. You will destroy others and you will destroy yourself. But the heart that is set on a true love, on the love of Christ, not for the things that Jesus can give you, but for Jesus himself, that is a life that will actually experience true life, eternal life. And so how do we live this day? What does all of this mean, practically speaking, for our lives today? We all live in a city, or maybe if you don't live in the city of Altoona, maybe you live, even if you live up the mountain, right? It still counts. We live as part of a civilization, right? We live under a particular government, under a particular state, with a particular city and a particular economy, right? We participate in this city. We participate in society. And there are many aspects of our society that are evil. People profit off of evil. People profit off of other people's sufferings and their hardship. There are many elements of our society where people fight back, not through violence, but through trying to do good, valuing people in the image of God. All right, how does Babylon make its money? Through profiting off of human souls. But how is the Lamb's New Jerusalem developed? By the saving of souls. Right? We all have a choice every single day what we will love and how we will pursue that love. Are we going to wake up day after day and love pleasure and love power and love wealth and do everything we can to get it, even if it means hurting other people or using other people or just ignoring them and pretending that they don't exist, or devaluing them and pretending that they're not human beings made in God's image? Or will we choose a different love, a love for Christ? And will we wake up every day and go to work and interact with our neighbors and live in such a way that values people and treats them the way that Christ treats them? That we would see them the way Christ sees them. And instead of using and abusing human souls, actually sacrifice for them and serve them. That we would lay down our own lives like the Lamb has laid down his life. Will we create a city and will we create a society that actually resembles the way of Jesus, the way of wisdom, the way of goodness? Like, that is a choice that we have to make every single day that we wake up. What do you truly love? And how will you pursue it? Will you choose Babylon? Or will you choose a different way? The way of Jesus. If you would you pray with me?